Hello, Ilanka.
Hello, Mandy.
How are you today?
I'm good. I'm really excited about this story that we have.
Me too. How did you come across this, by the way?
That's a good question.
Okay. Well, this is a great start to the podcast. Like we've got all the information ready.
I feel like I listen to so many crime stories and crime shows, true crime podcasts, and on YouTube. So I'm not really sure where I heard the story the first time. But I was just fascinated by it. It was just a very interesting story. And so I thought we should maybe start with this one.
Yeah, I love it. And the reason we decided to go with this one is because it's actually a positive story. Like, very sad,
Yeah.
as you'll see with the whole content. It's obviously not like a sunshine and rainbow story, but it's very rare that you get a relatively good ending to a true
Yeah.
crime story.
Yes.
And that's what we wanted to
Exactly.
start with, and just to, yeah, make it a little less dark, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting because when I watch something like Unsolved Mysteries, for example, I'm still surprised at the end of the show when it's unsolved. I still
Right?
want the answer to the story, right?
I
And I
know.
think this one fascinated me exactly for that reason, because we typically don't see an ending like this. And even though it was a really traumatic experience, it doesn't usually pan out this way. So I think it's going to be
Yeah,
interesting.
exactly. It's so funny when you said that you're still surprised at the end that it's not solved. I'm always like this is where the blonde comes in, right? I'll watch a survivor story, and then while they're telling the story, I'm like, I wonder if they survived. Like, did they make
Yeah,
it? But they're actually telling the
yeah,
story. So yeah, I I get
love it.
it.
Yeah, well, we're obviously fascinated by these kinds of stories. So
Yes,
yeah, let's get into it.
let's go. Action.
It is September 6th, 2006. It's a Wednesday. The sun is going down over southeast Portland, Oregon, on a small, quiet street in a neighborhood called Montevilla. Everything looks completely normal. You have typical small houses, big trees, people walking their dogs. Nobody knows a man is hiding in one of those houses. He has been there for a while now. He let himself in through the front door with a key. He punched in the alarm code. He walked to the main bedroom and he got into position behind the door. He's wearing yellow rubber gloves. He's holding a claw hammer, waiting for the owner of the house to come home.
His name is Edward Dalton Heffy. He is 59 years old and he is not there by accident. Someone paid him to be there. Someone gave him that key and the alarm code. Someone told him exactly when the woman who lived in that house would be coming home. That woman is 51-year-old Susan Kuhnhausen. She is an emergency room nurse, and for 30 years she has worked in one of the most intense environments a human being can work in. She has seen things most people never see, and she has had to stay calm in situations that would break most people. She has kept her head when everything around her was falling apart.
Now, Edward Haffey doesn't know this about her.
And it would cost him dearly.
This is the story of Susan Kuhnhausen.
To understand what happens on that Wednesday evening, you have to go back 18 years. It's 1988, Susan is 33 years old, and at this point she is single, and although she has good times with her girlfriends, she is ready to have someone special in her life. Her mother and a friend decide to take out a personal ad in a local newspaper called the Willamette Week. The ad says this: someone different, single white female, 33, overweight but not over life. looking for someone who wants more from a relationship than just slender. Active healthcare professional, enjoys exploring Northwest, interested in conversation, good times with someone who is intelligent, thoughtful, and full of humor. Must be emotionally, fiscally mature, and if you are seeking a bright, funny lady who is adventurous enough to advertise, then please reply. So she gets a lot of replies, and most of them go nowhere, except for one that gets her attention.
So this reply says, "Hi, different. My name is Mike. I'm 39, divorced. I love being outdoors, hiking through caves, walking on the beach at sunset."
So Susan picks up the phone and calls him. She likes his voice right away. It's warm, calm, he asks real questions, and he actually listens to her answers. They talk for hours, and then they talk more, and more. Before they ever meet in person, Susan estimates they spend over 100 hours on the phone together. She marks the date of their very first phone call, January 30th, 1988, in her diary. She draws a little smiley face next to it in red pen.
Their first date is at a garden near Reed College. They feed ducks. Mike throws unsalted peanuts to squirrels. He's stocky, bearded, with long, sandy hair and big glasses.
Not exactly what she imagined, but Susan isn't focused on that. She is focused on how he makes her feel, like she matters, like she's interesting, like someone finally sees her.
Less than a year later, they drive to Reno to get married.
Susan always said there was no bigger gamble in life than marriage.
She had no idea how right she would be.
The first years are okay. They hike together, they travel. Susan feels like she finally has a partner, someone in her corner.
And then, slowly, things start to change. Mike starts asking Susan where she's going every time she leaves the house. He checks how much money she spends. He wants to know her plans before she makes them. He's not violent, he never hits her, but he's always watching, always questioning, always there.
It's the kind of control that is hard to name. It doesn't look like abuse from the outside. It just looks like a husband who really wants to know what his wife is doing. But when you are living it, when you are the one who feels like you need to ask permission to buy a new pair of shoes, you know that is the type of control that can turn into something destructive.
Mike is also bitter. He had been divorced once before Susan, and he blamed his first wife for everything that went wrong. And that bitterness never really left him. It just found new places to live. Over the years, it actually got worse. The world was always against Mike. Nothing was ever his fault. He had a way of walking into a room and then just sort of making it feel smaller.
Susan tried. She really did. She suggested counseling. She looked for ways to make things better. And on the rare occasion that Mike spoke about having seen horrible things whilst on duty in Vietnam, she suggested he goes to the vet center or connects with other veterans. But he refused. He said he puts everything in a room and locks the door. She wanted to help him, but he was not willing. She stayed for 17 years. She stayed partly because she grew up in a home that wasn't stable. Her parents separated when she was in second grade, and she kept trying, kept hoping the man from the phone calls, the warm, curious, gentle man, might come back. In September 2005, Susan had finally had enough. She asked Mike to move out. He went to stay in his father's house, and Susan, the caring person that she was not cruel about it. She didn't change the locks, she didn't change the alarm code. She still invited him to family get-togethers. She thought maybe they could stay friends. She wasn't angry, she was just done. I cared about him, she later said, but I didn't want to live with him anymore. I wanted to be happy again.
Early on in their marriage, Mike said to her that he didn't want to be divorced again. So, when in June 2006 she told him that she was going to file for divorce, he said he needed more time to get his mind together. And that is when Mike started doing the maths. The house was paid off and it was worth around $300,000. They had been married for almost 18 years, which meant that Mike had a legal claim to part of the house. He had just lost his job, he had no money, he had nowhere to go, and he had just found out that Susan had removed him from her life insurance policy. She had listed her brother instead. Now, Mike felt like everything was being taken from him, and he made a decision. And he decided that the only way out of this situation, the only way to get the house and to get the money, the things that he felt he deserved, was to have Susan murdered. He just needed to find the right person to do it. And he didn't actually have to look very far either. A couple of years earlier, Mike had been working as a custodial supervisor at a place called Fantasy Adult Video in Portland. And in July 2004, he hired a man named Edward Haffey to clean floors there. Now, Ed is not a professional hitman. He's not someone with training or skill or experience necessarily in this kind of thing. He's a 59-year-old man with a long criminal record and a serious cocaine problem. He grew up in a normal middle-class family. He played tennis as a kid. His childhood was fine. Then he went to Vietnam, and like a lot of men who went to Vietnam, he came back a different person. In 1991, he actually arranged the murder of his ex-girlfriend. Her name was Georgia Lee Dutton. Her body was found near the Umpqua River in Oregon. Haffey was convicted in 1994 for conspiracy to commit murder. He served 9 years in prison and was released in November 2003. He moved to Portland and needed work, and obviously Mike gave him that opportunity. And 2 years later, Mike offered him something very different. $50,000 to murder Susan Kuhnhausen and make it look like a burglary gone wrong. $25,000 up front and the rest when the job was done. Haffey said yes.
But he was not careful about it. 3 days before the attack, he told his cocaine dealer he was about to come into a lot of money. He also went to a former prison friend and offered him $5,000 to help. The man said no. He said a human life was worth more than $5,000. Haffey didn't look for anyone else, and he decided he was going to do it alone.
So, on the morning of September 6, 2006, Haffey got himself ready. And here is what he brought with him: a red and black claw hammer, yellow rubber gloves so he wouldn't leave any fingerprints, a bottle of Hershey's chocolate syrup — he was a diabetic and needed the sugar — his diabetic pills, and $200 in cash, as well as a planner. He was high when he walked into that house. His autopsy would later show that he had a near lethal amount of cocaine in his system that day. He used the key that Mike gave him and also the alarm code, and he went to the bedroom. He put on the gloves, picked up the hammer, and waited behind the door.
Susan finished her shift at Providence Portland Medical Center and started the drive home. But she didn't go straight home. She stopped at her hair salon on East Burnside Street first. And while she was waiting, she picked up an Oprah magazine and found a poem that read, "I will not die an unlived life. I will not live in fear." An hour later, she drove to her house with the grey picket fence on her street in Montevilla. She went inside and found a note in the mudroom from Mike. It read, "Sue, haven't been sleeping, had to get away, went to the beach, love me." She didn't think anything of it. She put her bag down, kicked off her Birkenstocks, and walked toward her bedroom to get out of her work clothes. She noticed the door was half closed, and not how she left it that morning. And the room was very dark, which was strange since she always opened the blinds before she left. But her house had been alarmed, so she had no reason to suspect anything was wrong and just assumed that she forgot that morning. As she moved into the bedroom, Ed Haffey stepped out from behind the partially closed door. She demanded to know who he was and told him to get out. He swung the hammer, hitting her on the side of the head and then again on the temple. She began struggling with him for the hammer, and as they fought, she noticed he never asked her where her safe was, whether she had money or drugs in the house. None of the things a burglar would say. During the struggle, he said to her, "You strong." He sounded surprised, but also excited. She knew then that he was there to murder her. She grabbed him by the throat. He began to turn blue, and when she felt he was close to passing out, she grabbed the hammer and began hitting him with it. Her father had been a carpenter and had always told her that if she ever needed to defend herself with the hammer, she should use the claw end because that would work best. So she did. She hit him 3 or 4 times before she lost control of the hammer again and ran. She made it just a few feet outside the bedroom door before he grabbed her from behind, spun her around, and began punching her in the face. He split her lip open. She felt dizzy. Both of them were bleeding. She grabbed him by the leg and pulled him down, continuing to try to get the hammer out of his hand. But she couldn't. She was exhausted. She screamed for her neighbor Joe, hoping he would hear her, but her voice was fading, and so was her strength. She started biting him on his forearm, his upper arm, the edge of his back, his right flank, and his thigh, but he still wouldn't release the hammer. Then she bites him in the genitals, hoping that will make him let go of the hammer, and also because she understood that if she died, the mark she left on him would later help identify him as her attacker. When she accepted she was not going to get the hammer back, she decided to use her body as a weapon. She managed to push him face down into the hardwood floor and positioned herself on his back. She put her arm under his neck and began to squeeze. She told him to tell her who sent him, and she would call him an ambulance. And then she released the pressure just a little bit to give him air so he could speak to answer her. But he didn't. Instead, he tried to flip her off his back, and she knew that if he succeeded, she would be dead. So she leaned forward and held on until he was still. Susan grabbed the hammer, ran out of the house to the next door neighbor. She banged on the door and said, "Call 911. I think I killed him." Anne Warnock phoned 911, and here is an excerpt of that call.
Anne, we have an intruder in the house next door. The intruder was in the bedroom with a hammer. The woman who lives there thinks she may have strangled him. He was down when she left.
The dispatcher answered, "Can you put her on the phone?"
Anne, she's bleeding.
Dispatcher, does she need an ambulance?
Anne, no, she's a nurse. She says call an ambulance for the guy. He may be dead. The police arrived and found Edward Haffey's body in the hallway. At first, they thought it was a burglary gone wrong, but something didn't add up. There was no broken window, no kicked-in door, and in Haffey's backpack, detectives found a day planner. On the page for the week of September 4th, someone had written 2 words, "Call Mike." Next to it was a phone number. It belonged to Michael Kuhnhausen. Detectives started pulling on that thread. They found out about the pending divorce, the house, the life insurance policy. They found witnesses, people Mike had spoken to about wanting Susan dead. They found out he had approached at least 3 other people before Haffey agreed to do the job. On September 8th, 2 days after the attack, Mike had left a suicide note at his father's house, and it read, "All I ever wanted was to be loved, and every time I had it, I fucked it up." Then he ran. Police put out a bulletin. They caught him a week later in the parking garage of a hospital. He told officers, I have nothing to live for anymore. Mike Kuhnhausen was arrested and charged with solicitation of aggravated murder.
Susan filed for divorce the day after his arrest. She also filed a lawsuit against him for $1 million, not because she needed the money, but because she didn't want him walking out of prison with enough money to try and kill her again.
Mike eventually pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison. At his sentencing, he said, "I hurt a lot of people and I'm sorry. That's all I can say." He died in prison in June of 2014 from cancer, 3 months before he was due to be released.
When Susan was told that Haffey had died on the night of the attack, her first thought was not relief, and it was not anger. She said, "I immediately thought about his family. Everybody has somebody who loves them." His family heard about that, and after the trial they sent Susan a heartfelt message that read,
Bill's nephew was loved by his family when he was a child. However, all this unlawful actions when he was grown deeply disturbed the family. There was no excuse for his illegal and dreadful deeds. And although this was a terrible thing that happened, no one in this family has any hard feelings toward you. You did what you were forced to do, and in doing so, spared many from the same trauma that you experienced. We wish you well, and may God bless you.
In the years after, Susan didn't disappear. She didn't go quiet. She changed her last name to Walters, and she got to work. She kept working as an ER nurse until December 2014, 30 years in total. She worked with Multnomah County to help create a free resource called Case Companion, built for crime victims trying to find their way through the justice system. She worked with Women's Strength and the Oregon Crime Victim Law Center. She walked into rooms full of people who were scared and lost, and she told them what she knew.
It was clear that Edward Haffey underestimated her.
And Mike Kuhnhausen underestimated her.
Neither of them got to make that mistake twice.
And when people ask Susan about what happens in that bedroom, about the fact that she took a man's life, she doesn't look away. She doesn't make excuses. She just tells them the truth.
I didn't choose to kill him.
I chose to live. Wow. Badass. What stuck out to me was her ability to think so clearly throughout this whole process. I mean, it's like she had 3 different trains of thought happening at the same time. So while he was attacking her, she was focusing on defending herself, surviving. Then she also was focusing on how to leave evidence. I mean, at some point she said in an interview that she was even trying to reach his wallet out of his pocket to throw it under the bed so that if she died, the police would find evidence of, who her attacker was. And to me, it's just mind-boggling, that level of cognitive ability in a moment like that. It's something you usually see in movies, right, with trained assassins or soldiers or special forces.
Yeah. Well, I think the training that she had as an ER nurse, that obviously had contributed to her thinking the way that she did in that moment. So she obviously had like the ability to think very clearly under high levels of stress. And so I think that obviously played a massive role in her surviving this. But I also think that there are so many little things that happened that was like leading up to this, that also just, call it grace, call it destiny, call it luck, whatever it is, certain things that just actually worked out okay for her, that actually helped her to survive. For example, the fact that he was high when he came into the house, right? It's interesting just to, like, not that I know exactly, what the effect would be on different people if they are high on cocaine, whether that would actually make them more, or like more focused, I suppose. So I think it's interesting just to consider that he wasn't necessarily 100% himself in that moment. And also the fact that he approached other people and they said no. So I'm constantly thinking of what if someone said yes and they were willing to help him, would the outcome have been the same if there were two people trying to take her down, right? So
True.
that's just interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean the fact that her father taught her to use the claw side of the hammer. I mean, whose father tells their daughter, "Hey, if you ever get attacked, use the claw side of a hammer"? Like, I
Yeah, and I
mean,
think that there's so many synchronicities that, even the magazine that she read with this quote
yes,
that "do not live in fear," right? It's just interesting how it all panned out. And I think also the fact that he actually managed to hit her, but that those first initial blows didn't actually, like, she
knock
was
her
still able
out.
to fight back. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I also, in one of the interviews, I wrote down this quote because I thought it was so, yeah, it just adds to those synchronicities, right? And she said, one of the nice things about emergency nursing is that there's a great deal of variety, and you have to be able to make critical decisions in a very short space of time, and you have to trust that you are doing the right thing. So it's like she was conditioned, like this is the moment she's been training for her whole life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And to
It's
me, it
fascinating.
also, it made me wonder that question of nature versus nurture. So, is it possible to train yourself to become like Susan? Is it the training that saved her, or is it just her personality that stays calm in these pressure situations? So I don't know, that's a question that just fascinates me. And I think when you look at this and also stories from soldiers, I think there's a lot of evidence that shows that we can, in fact, train ourselves to be better in these situations, to be more prepared. And I just find that
Yeah.
very hopeful as well. And that it's maybe
Yeah.
worth it to do these
To take that
self-defense.
first, yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go
To take
go
that
do your
class.
Krav Maga.
Yeah. I always say that I have no idea how I would respond in these situations, but I also know that when you have a will to live, you are going to do whatever is available and whatever you can do to keep yourself alive, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I think there's definitely that like inherent will inside of all of us to live. And
yeah,
so that was obviously there for her as well, pairing with the training and the experience and just the way she thinks in these high pressure situations. I think it
yeah.
all worked out well for her in the end.
Dude, I was like, when I went through this case, I'm like, we used to play paintball, right, with my husband and his friends or our friends, and I would be I would be completely useless in a war. So I would be the one
Yeah,
hiding.
I would just be hiding. Yeah, me
Yeah,
too.
hiding. And I won every time because I was the last man standing, but it's just because I hid. Like I had zero impact on the game. And it's like my mind just zonks out in those moments. So I do think that I'm more of a flight person than a fight person. But if you can't flee, what then? It's interesting to know what if the flight option isn't available, does the
Yeah,
other one kick in automatically?
that's very interesting. It just made me think of an experience we had when we were just married. We didn't have any children yet. And we were living in this small 2-bedroom apartment. And it was raining so hard that night. And we would typically lock our bedroom door when we went to bed. But I heard something inside the house. And we had this little, the slit underneath the door. You can actually see the light. If you like peek under the door, you can
Oh
sort of
my
see into
goodness.
the rest of the house. And I knew that someone was in the house, but luckily the door was locked. And my husband actually had this steel bat that he got from his grandfather for a gift. And
Harlequin
this
style,
thing,
baby.
yes, literally, this thing was standing behind the door. And my husband was sitting like up in the bed and contemplating, should we phone someone? What should we do? Like, is there even someone in the house? And I was convinced that I heard someone, and I took that bat. I just said to my husband, I just stay on the bed, because when I start swinging this thing, I'm not stopping. So it's just interesting how we respond in situations like this. But I think also you hear of so many stories where, especially women, didn't necessarily fight back because they just knew instinctively that fighting back would actually put them in more danger. So I think it's interesting just to consider how we respond, and just sort of the gut feel that we have in a moment that's like, I have to fight. Like Susan just knew this guy was not here to steal something. He was there to kill her. And it was very obvious to her that she had to fight for her life. And she did.
Yeah, and so it's one thing to fight, right? But just her ability to still think while fighting,
Yes.
to have
Yes.
this cognitive process of, oh, he didn't ask me for money or for the safe, so he's
Yeah,
here to kill me. And then she has all these thought processes running alongside the fight. And so to me, but again, it feeds into how you have to respond in an emergency situation, right? In the emergency room. So you have to do and think a few steps ahead at the same time.
And I'm not sure how long like the typical boxing fight is, right? If you think of like a very intense fight, they were fighting for like 14 minutes. It was like a
It's a lot.
14-minute struggle between the two of them. And I'm just thinking, if you look at like these boxing fights or MMA fights, these guys are going at each other like they want to kill each other, right? And they are so tired by the end of like a minute round or a 2-minute round, however long the rounds are. They aren't that long. We can confirm it. But it's just interesting that she actually, although she was tired, it's obvious that she was exhausted, but she stayed in it for 14 minutes, which is just insane to my brain.
Yeah, and I mean, you could argue, adrenaline gives us this superhuman strength and power, but it doesn't last very long. It's not endurance. That being said, I mean, luckily they're tired together. So they're both not professional fighters. So I think, and I don't know, like I said, maybe someone in the comments can tell us what the effect of cocaine is. Does it energize you? Or does it, I don't know, make you zonk out?
Yeah, I think it's like if you think about different types of drugs have different types of effects on people. So
Yeah.
if you think about weed, some people get happy on it and they are very talkative, and others aren't.
Exactly.
So it
Exactly.
might be the same with cocaine. I think it's just interesting that he was high, and he was definitely not 100% himself in that moment, and yet he still had enough presence to go for it, like to actually try and take her out. It's
Yeah.
crazy. But I think the fact that he had the Hershey's syrup in his bag, which tells you it's such a like human thing, right? It's such a
Yeah.
humanizing thing that he was about to go and take someone out, right? But he thought, okay, I'm going to sit and wait in this house. I'm not sure for how long. So let me take care of myself and this diabetic condition that I have, and keep the Hershey's syrup with me just in case I need it. It's so
It's
interesting to
crazy. It's
me
like,
that,
let me pump myself full of cocaine to the point where it almost kills me. But it's not the
yeah,
diabetes that is going to take me out. I go on my
Yeah,
terms.
it's great.
No, it's crazy. And it was just this perfect storm, right? Because Mike was, he was desperate. So in his mind, he's got nothing to lose. And he had already lost everything. This was his last chance. And, from what I've read about him, he was obsessed with money. And he was convinced that the whole world was conspiring against him all the time. So I think he was in this constant sense of survival mode to the point where he didn't think about other people anymore. Just on a lighter note, do you think Susan had any hand in writing that ad? Because I'm like, if her mom actually wrote it and she's like, someone different. Overweight, but not over love, right? It's almost like it hits different
I
if someone else writes that about you versus when you do it
yeah.
yourself.
I mean, I feel like she probably, I mean, if you look at all of the interviews with Susan, she just seems like such a sweet, caring person. So I feel like the ad is probably very representative of who she is or who she was at the time. But I think the thing that fascinated me, being in 2026 where we have access to the internet and, you send someone a message over WhatsApp or whatever it is, and we have all of these like dating apps, actually putting an ad in the newspaper and then someone responds in the newspaper and you have to like remember to go and look at the newspaper. It's just interesting how people
Oh,
connected
true.
back in the 80s, right? It's almost like it's a
Right.
different world to what we're used to.
I didn't even think of that. So he had to respond in the newspaper. He didn't phone
Yeah.
her.
Well,
Imagine
I'm
it's like the
assuming that,
whole world is watching your love story unfold. It's like, what's it, Love is Blind or something of the 80s.
yeah, I think it would be interesting to like research that a little bit because obviously she places the ad in the newspaper, and I know there is a number at the bottom of that ad. So I don't know if that's like a PO box or I'm not sure, but
Or
still,
just a
it's
reference.
fascinating. I have no idea.
That's so interesting. Oh, what a world, man. Can't imagine living like that
Yeah.
anymore. And to me, it's also crazy. She stuck it out 17 years. 17 years. And from what it sounds like, it's fairly quickly that it started to go pear-shaped, or that he started showing this other side of him that was very negative. I remember something along the lines of his philosophy in life is life is a shit sandwich, and each day you just take another bite until you die, something like that. So, I mean, there's a little fucking ray of
Ray of
sunshine right there.
sunshine.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So to stick it,
Yeah.
it also just shows her character is just so beautiful, right? So she really wants to help people. She cares deeply. And her first thought when she heard that Ed was dead was not relief, which would have been a
Yeah.
perfectly acceptable emotion to feel in that moment, right?
Yeah.
Her first thought was, he's got family, someone who loves him just lost him. And she felt sad about that. And it's, yeah, she's amazing. We're a fan, Susan, if you ever see this. Amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. That's it. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, our very first episode. So we're super excited. And let us know in the comments below what you think about this case. What are your thoughts on the mindset of these three main characters involved? And also, if there are cases that you are really keen to hear about, let us know. And then we know what to research and talk about next.
Yeah. Thank you for listening or watching.
We'll see you next time.